Even though we are on this late at night, the right people are watching. KG, thank you so much. Glad you're there, mate, each and every night. Now, just a little update to the Christian Porter thing. There has been no change to his ministerial status. Tonight, there is no expectation of that before tomorrow morning or anything like that. But so let's not get too ahead of ourselves with what the ghost would like to happen. But just wanted to tell you what's going on. So let's have a conversation right now with Holly Hughes, Senator New South Wales, representing the Liberal Party. The wonderful Christy McSweeney, who, well, she'd love to be a future senator, presumably the Liberal Party, presumably Western Australia, but she's from everywhere. And the bloke who at any time could join the upper house of anywhere he likes because he's got a few union mates, is none other than our mate Darren Barnett.
They're in the wrong unions, Paul, but yes, I take your point.
I know. I just wanted to verbal everyone. It's a lovely way to introduce everyone here. Now, let's talk about, I reckon, the most obvious demonstrable ism that exists in Australia is ageism, right? So sexism, racism, ageism. The attitude towards people of a certain age, and that age is increasingly getting younger, is horrific. You know it as somebody who may have been on the long-term unemployed list. You know it as somebody who might be in an organisation, but you're progress stopped at a certain age. Well, there was an interesting thing from the Human Rights Commission today that says 60% of Australians agree that they may have stereotyped people or made assumptions about people because of their age. The report is, what has age got to do with this? Christy, I think this is the slam dunk most obvious ism in Australia. We don't talk about it enough, and we do bugger all to change it.
No, we don't talk about it enough. And I know in our industry, Paul, in media and communications, there's a lot of ageism and there's a lot of people, PR firms, advertising firms, media firms, only wanting to hire people that fit a certain image and a certain demographic and a certain look. And also there is a perception that younger people will work for nothing and do whatever it takes to get a foot on the ladder, whereas someone who might be older and a bit more skilled is going to ask questions around perhaps being entitled to fair pay for fair work. So that's a part of ageism in the media and communications industry, magazines and fashion as well, that is absolutely rife. And of course, as I've said, people want people to look a certain way. But there are so many isms in terms of discrimination of hiring practices, and we need to get better. Older people make a fantastic contribution to our workforce. People are going to work longer and longer than previous generations, and I think workplaces need to adapt and people need to adapt their attitudes.
Now, also, it's this thing, Holly, where because ageism doesn't come with a ribbon, it doesn't come with a hashtag, it doesn't come with sort of sexiness that insert other causes do, it just floats to one side. But we know that, and this is why I was such a supporter and still remain such a supporter of JobKeeper, right? Which is, the older you are, when you go on the unemployment queue, the longer it takes to come back if you come back from it. That's why if you had a way to keep people of a certain age in their job, it meant we avoided that, and it is to the eternal credit of everyone behind it. But how do you feel about ageism in Australia and about genuine attempts to actually do something about it?
Look, I think Kate Patterson's doing a fantastic job when she's starting to talk about aged people and people ageing through Australian society and how we need to keep them engaged with the workforce and keep options open to them. But I do think this is one of those isms, if you like, that has applications almost across the board because, I know there's people that don't want to hire millennials because there's a real attitude around what millennials expect when they come into the workforce. These are some of these kids that went through school where there were participation awards. So everyone wins a prize. These guys have never had to compete for anything because no one ever said no to them. And then you've got ageism when it comes to women in their sort of late 20s through to their mid-30s, 40s, because, they might go have a baby, so we need to have a look at that. So ageism isn't just about people that are over a certain age. I think there's attitudes across the workplace towards different cohorts that are very stereotyped and not always applicable to every single possible employee you could have. So we do need to try and start to encourage people to look at the individual. There are millennials that you wouldn't hire or, water on if they were on fire. You know, there's older people who do think that they can contribute more than they probably can. But by the same account, there's others that are absolutely brilliant on every front. And so these isms, I think, and stereotype around what group someone falls part of, whether they're Gen X, Gen Y, boomers, whatever it is, we far too easily put those tags on. And I don't think it's really doing anyone any justice.
Yeah, I agree completely. Now, let's talk here about Joel Fitzgibbon on his way out the door. He's got a warning for the Labor Party. If you go all in on climate, you're going to get exactly the same result you got in 2019, 2016, 2013 and 2010. You're going to be in trouble, okay? You either got to go cap in hand to the Greens or you're handed your backside by the current government. Anthony Albanese has said this week in both an opinion piece in The Australian and lots of other things that he thinks climate, not China, should be the heart of the focus between Australia and the United States. Roll the tape.
Begin that by adopting net zero emissions by 2050, but we could do much more as well. Recognise that climate change is not just an environmental issue, it's an economic one in which we can transform our economy to create more jobs, to lower energy prices and to assist in high-value manufacturing.
Now, Darren, do you believe what Joel Fitzgibbon is saying out the door here, which is if you're going to double down on this stuff, great. Twitter's going to love you. Q&A will be the easiest ride of your life. They'll give you high fives on Radio National every morning, but you'll get exactly the same result as you've got multiple times now.
Oh, look, I think he's onto something, and obviously he had a big scare in his seat at the most recent election where it was probably more One Nation gave a scare than the Nationals. I think they went from about 1 or 2% up to 21-ish on a primary and nearly stole the seat. So, look, Labor's got questions that it needs to ask, trying to marry up those two parts of its voter base. There's an old sort of theory that federal elections, that the two most important sectors are national security and the economy. They're strong suits of the coalition. The next tier down is health and education. If it becomes about one of those two, Labor is in a much better position, and 2016 is a good answer, a good way of illustrating that with the Medicare campaign. And climate is probably tier 3. So if Labor decides to go to the election on climate, that probably will hamper its chances of finding those extra 7 or 8 seats that it needs. And it's going to be Queensland again. It's always Queensland. So the suite of policies they took to the most recent federal election didn't work. So they're going to have to come up with something that can work.
Now, I mean, Christy, I'm not going to pretend as well that we don't have a scenario where net zero 2050 is going to be most likely the global agreements that'll be everywhere. Australia may not formalise that, but they've said, look, we'll get there, but we'll do it via technology, not taxes. Again, we keep thinking that this next election is just all about COVID management, borders and vaccines and all that stuff. The truth is that I think that still there are fundamentals here, right? What should the relationship be with the United States? About climate or about China? What should the climate policy be? Should it be technology or should it be a price on carbon? Because they have an ETS planned, set policy. That is going to be a difference.
Look, Albo is running into danger here of trying to position himself as a globalist statesman on the world stage and ignoring the domestic needs and the domestic voting intentions of Australians. As Darren said, Labor is in a bind trying to prosecute two messages to two parts of Australia. And Labor likes to talk about the coalition losing voters because they feel that the coalition isn't doing enough. That is untrue. The coalition is meeting its targets. However, they like to point to seats like Higgins and Wentworth and so forth. But those voters will still vote Liberal and not Greens because they're worried about the damage Labor will do to the economy. That's the difference. Labor voters who don't see that Labor is virtue signalling enough to them on climate, they will vote Greens. Here's the fundamental challenge of Labor.
Well, and as I showed you before, the analysis of the 2019 election, Anthony Green did it. I was reading it today. Yes, that's what I do with my days. 86% of Greens' preferences went to Labor, right? So we know that if you want to be hardcore on climate, you can vote Green. You'll end up with Labor anyway. The idea that Labor wants to fiddle around on the sides. Anyway, That's where they are. They're telling you up front. If you're one of these people sitting there going, oh, they're not conservative enough and they're not libertarian enough, the other mob's going to really be a big change for you, okay? Now, Holly, I want to ask you about this new set of glasses that I know by mentioning I'm kind of adding to the hype around them all. But Facebook's done a deal with Ray-Ban, normal, wonderful Ray-Ban glasses, but they've got a camera in them. Now, no way that a perv will use that to do anything weird with. How do you feel about the idea? I mean, they've always sort of had cameras in glasses before, but they've always looked a little bit weird. These are basically a pair of normal sunglasses. Do you think there may be one or two issues here?
Oh, I think there could be one or two issues with these. I think there could be more than one or two issues with these. It's incredibly disturbing to think that wherever you go, whenever you're somewhere, that someone could be watching and recording you and you have no idea. I mean, the invasion of privacy is obviously the first part of this, but just the data that's going to be going back to Facebook, the control that they're going to start to have when you look at facial ID and they can start to put together where you are, who you are, what you're doing, where, you know, it's absolutely frightening to think that this could be able to happen. I have zero support for them, I must say. I just think it's a step too far. There's one thing about knowing when you're on camera. There's another thing when you've got absolutely no idea when you're on camera.
Now, again, yeah, because Christy, then apparently part of the way these glasses either can be tuned or otherwise is that under some settings a little light will go on, but that has to be pretty obvious that that's the case. That said, obviously, somebody standing on the other side of a beach can do this and you don't know that they're filming you directly, but it's a little bit different if I'm standing opposite you having a chat, at the pool and I got the glasses on.
I'm astounded that Facebook has come out with this product, pushing the envelope at a time where there are bills by the Republicans and the Democrats through the US House and the Senate to reform the US antitrust legislation because they think Facebook is getting away with too much in terms of privacy and self-preferencing their own products on an unsuspecting public who doesn't know how to opt out. And even in Australia today, if you are a parent and you set up Family Link, do you know the privacy settings of your child's iCloud account automatically defers to that child at 13 to have to opt back in. That is the current Facebook standard, that a child at 13 years of age can make its own privacy decisions around Facebook collecting its data. What 13-year-old do we know that's going to make a really informed decision and even tick the right box?
Which 33-year-old do we know? Anyway.
Well, exactly.
Yeah, I'm with you guys. Thank you. Thank you, Senator, future senators, or at least aspirants, depending on if the unions change. Thank you, guys. All right, after the break, New South Wales Parliament should be sitting, all of them should be sitting. A Labor MP who wants to go to work, but for some reason, the government won't let him, joins us